take rests. Yeah. Operating from a place of rest is going to make you so much more successful and fulfilled in the end than to always be running on, you can't pour out of an empty cup, as we've heard of. So I think stepping back, taking rests, it's all just so important.
Yeah. Welcome back to the Cypress Room. This is a podcast where we dive deep on influencing with integrity. I am Christina Mascari.
I'm Meggie Honeycutt.
And we're back for another episode.
We're back again.
And today, you guys, we are going to be talking about, things that can be scary to talk about. We're going to be talking about failure.
Yeah.
And we're going to be talking about burnout.
Yes.
So 2 negative subjects, I guess, but we're going to turn them into a positive because we both believe that in the conflict, in the crushing and the pressing, our name is Cypress. In the pressing, we believe that there's always something to learn and there's always breakthrough on the other side, and failure and burnout are going to come, and how do we counteract them, and how do we push through, and how do we learn from them?
Right. And it goes along with, what we talked about in our first episode of being able to withstand and still press through in a winter season and a harder season, because, there are no guarantees that everything's going to be great all the time, right? In life, in business, we're going to experience difficult seasons. That's just part of life. And I think it's important that's where community is so important, to be able to learn from others how they've navigated these things, how they've pressed through to the other side, and learn something from it. So,
and we talked a lot about in the first episode of just where you find your value and worth. And we both had a lot of value in what we did and the way people viewed us and the way people saw us. And that is definitely a huge trap of being a content creator, especially with technology is amazing and these platforms are amazing because they want people on them. So they give you so many statistics and analytics about your content that you're putting out, which is amazing because it can help you learn and grow. And it really helped shape my channel because I could see the videos that people were responding to and how long they were watching. And it made me make better videos for people and better serve the people that were watching me. But at the same time, every time I put a YouTube video up, there is a top 10 list on my back end. And I immediately, with it going up in 30 seconds to a minute, I can see where it's falling on my last 10 videos. And so when I upload a video and it's like hanging out at number 9 or 8 or 10, it's really hard to not sit there and be like, oh, well, I guess this video is a failure. Nobody's going to watch it. Nobody likes it. It was terrible. I need to just throw it away. Like, it's so hard not to get wrapped up in having your value on how is this video performing.
Exactly. And how many times did you think something was a failure and then later on that video took off? Like, it's not.
And I have like the most inappropriate thought in my mind, but I'm just going to say it because my husband says it to me every time. He says, it's a grower, not a shower.
Oh my gosh.
And I know that's it. That can be put in an inappropriate way, but I am putting it towards a video because, like I said, there are videos that have really good SEO in them and have that maybe my audience does not like. And so they're not clicking it right away. But one I can think of off the top of my head is I did a video comparing a chemical paint stripper to a heat gun and showed the differences in them and how they work and how they strip the paint off and everything. We're totally going to get flagged, aren't we? Because I'm saying stripping and saying the phrase. But this is me, you guys. This is me. But anyway, so I was comparing those two things, and that video did terrible when I put it up. It was one of those ones that was in the 10 or 9 spot of my last 10 videos, probably got, 5,000 views within the first couple of months it was up. And typically my videos within 2 months will have 20,000 views. And I honestly forgot about that video until recently. I went back and was just looking at some of my analytics over time, and that video has over 100,000 views now. So it's probably earned like $1,000. But at the time that I put it up, I'm like, oh, this is a failure. And, but it over time, it became more successful
Right.
and probably has a higher view count than some of my other videos that I considered successful at the time because they were like number 2 out of my top 10 videos when I posted them.
Yeah.
So perspective. Hindsight is always 20/20.
Yeah. And to realize failure is kind of subjective measurement, right?
Yeah.
Like sometimes we place unrealistic expectations on ourselves. Sometimes the success is just in starting and putting something out there. You know, we talked about the hardest part of this podcast was just getting started. And it made me think of how many things in my life I haven't just started because I was afraid to fail. It used to be a really big fear of mine was getting it wrong. Like I didn't want to do anything if I thought I was going to get it wrong and I didn't know exactly what I was doing and I needed all the details before I started because I wanted to make sure I was successful at whatever that thing was, that relationship, that hobby, business venture, whatever it was. And I think I missed out in those earlier years of mine on probably a lot of things because of that fear of failure, that fear of getting it wrong. And I think as I've gotten older and wiser and learned, like failure is opportunity. You know, it really tells us, points to things we need to grow or change or adjust, where we need to set boundaries, but we're never going to know if we don't just start, if we don't put ourselves out there, if we don't put the video out, if we didn't start the podcast.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and the thing that I had to learn too is that every video you put out can't be number 1. Like
Right.
it can't be, you're not going, the consistency, like we talked about that in an earlier episode about just like putting something up and setting that mark and holding yourself accountable. But I just had such an unrealistic expectation of if I put that consistency in every time I put something up, it's going to be better than the last thing. And that's just not always
Not
the case.
necessarily
Like
true.
sometimes projects resonate with a large audience and sometimes they don't. And that's okay. And understanding the value of just because something has a ton of views doesn't mean that it's more valuable than something that doesn't. Because there can be aspects in each video that make it better. Like I could have a video that has 10,000 views and it didn't speak to a lot of people, but the 10,000 people that watched it were specifically looking how to do this technique. And because I taught them how to do that technique and I had a link to that product, and then they actually learned how to use it, then they hit my link and purchased it through there, that video could be considered more successful because it had, you know, this affiliate sale that did really well than a video that has 1 million views, but it has nothing that I'm selling or nothing that I'm teaching in the long run. So it's just, how are you measuring success and how are you measuring failure on each project that you're doing? Yeah.
So can you think of a time where you looked at yourself as failure? Like maybe not even, let's talk, not necessarily content you've put out, but just in business and life where you felt like you failed, and how did you like process, move through?
Well, I mean, to be honest, I think I'm currently in that season because when I went full time, you've been there almost since the whole time I've been full time, and we've just been growing and growing and growing. And, you know, the money that we've brought in has like doubled, tripled, whatever. Right. And this is the first year that it's like, it's down. I'm just going to be honest. It's down from where it's been. But this is going to kind of lead into our other subject that we want to talk about. I was just going full force, constantly trying to strive, constantly trying to land a bigger deal, land a bigger brand. How many sponsorships can we put in here? How much like content can I put out in 1 month? And I think I just hit a wall after 3 years because there's only like so long you can sustain something like that. And taking a look back and seeing like how much I've built, like I am at this point, it's not like that's going to go away, but maybe I've reached a point where I'm kind of plateauing a little bit and figuring out what's more important. Is it more important to me, like, and having that balance, is it more important to me to like keep just putting out content and have no like balance in my normal life, have no free time to be with my kids, be with my husband, do other things that I enjoy. I think that's a trap of being a business owner too. It's really hard to shut off your brain and the ideas. So I'm in this past 6 months, I'm living in the season of my YouTube earnings are down. Right. My partnerships, I think I've just become more selective in them, and we're just not doing as much, which is good for me. And I think it's good for my audience. So just learning that, and I still feel successful today, even though if you looked at the numbers and be like, well, you're down. Like, I think in the real business world, you would say, well, that's a failure. Your earnings are down. Your numbers are down. If I had a board, they would be like, how do we get our numbers back up? Right. But I feel fulfilled in what I'm doing. I feel like the pace that I am at this year, this past 6 months, is more sustainable. Yeah. And I'm still making a decent living off of it. So the money is like enough. So just like kind of refocusing what success means to me and what I really want out of this.
Resetting those boundaries, the priorities. Yeah, I think that's good.
Because I guess I just got to a point where, and it's intoxicating, you guys, doing these brand deals. And I want you to speak to this a little bit too, because I know you have other clients besides me, but getting a rate increase feels so good. And then putting that content out and having the brand partner be really, really happy with it and wanting to work with you again and getting a rate increase is like, it's pretty euphoric. Mm-hmm. It feels really, really good. But that can't be the only thing I'm chasing after, because that feeling quickly goes away. And then you're like, well, I need to do that again. And it's not always going to happen where you can do it again. I mean, I think we've had instances where we've done that. We've gone through that process, and then I put out a video and that video doesn't do as well as the last one. And then we're going to them again, and maybe they still enjoyed the content. They think there's value behind it, but we go to renegotiate and they're like, well, this one didn't do as well. So now we're going to have to cut back. Am I humble enough to be like, well, I understand that? Or am I going to be like prideful and be like, well, then I'm not working with you again. So there's like this delicate balance there. And I think the more your worth is attached to like, can I raise my rate? Can I raise my rate? How big of a rate can I get? I think it's a pretty dangerous place to be as a content creator.
I mean, all of it leads back to like, where are you finding your joy and your worth from? And it can't be in what you're putting out and what deals you're getting, or you're going to be in for a real emotional roller coaster ride because, I think this year could be devastating in that sense, not just for your business, but all across the board. I mean, it has just been very dry, and brands are really tightening up budgets, and there isn't as much available out there this year for content creators. So that's why I think it is so vital for people to be rooted in what their identity, who they are, their value, and that makes all the difference.
And I do always have to go back to my why, because when I started this, however many years I started it, I was just doing it for the joy of it. I was doing it because I had found something that helped me in an area. Like, it helped me decorate my house without having to break the bank and just taking things that people were throwing away and saving them. That is the core of why my brand and Pretty Distressed exists. And I did that for free forever. And it coincides with why we're doing this. Like, we're not making any money doing this, but we think the things that we've learned and just being honest and open about them is valuable. And we want to put it out there, and maybe one day it'll pay us money. But my goal in Pretty Distressed was like, I'm going to make $1 million and be successful and have this brand and have people know my name. And that stuff like came, those successes of being able to make it a career came, but it was never the reason why I started it. So I don't know if that's a little bit too touchy-feely for like, you have to really think about why you're starting a business or why you're starting a brand. And if it's just to quit your job and make money, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it's going to work. Because it's always going to let you down at some point in your march. And if you don't have something to fall back onto that just has a little bit more substance and meaning to it, I don't know. Do you think sometimes I'm too touchy-feely about business? I mean, you've worked in the corporate world, so you can be honest.
Oh, that's like comparing apples to oranges, I think. Like, it's not even a fair comparison. I mean, certainly you are, but I think that's good to a degree.
Okay.
To have that.
I feel like you're being kind, but that's okay.
Well, I mean, I just think as women, we're naturally have an emotional connection to almost anything. Okay. So,
and I'm a very emotional person.
True. Plus, I think when you're doing this type of work, you invest so much time, so much energy. There's a lot of sacrifices that are made. So it feels more personal than going to a cubicle or to an office. When I think of my job in the marketplace in the corporate world, there was really not an emotional connection there. I mean, it was solely for me anyway, ambition, performance driven about achievements. I didn't have like this emotional, there wasn't a lot of personal sacrifice involved. Like, I don't know. Does that make sense? To me, I wasn't emotionally connected to that in the way that I am to the business I've created now. And maybe that's also because the relationships are so much richer in this work because of the community that's been created around it. And how, I mean, just kind of segueing into that, like how does community in your business help you navigate failure? I mean, do you feel like when you're going through the tough time, community helps you to press through? Are they a source of encouragement? Are they helping you solve problems? Like, how does your community help you in those situations?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, because I think we've all been there. It's just somebody that understands what you're going through and being like, hey, I am just, and everybody I've talked to at some point is just like, I'm exhausted, or I put this up and it didn't go well and I'm just ready to quit. It's just part of doing what we do. Like if you don't get to a point where you're like, I just want to quit and I don't want to do it, you might not be putting your full heart into it. I don't know. Maybe you have better boundaries than me, but it's just part of the creative process. And specifically what I do as a furniture flipper, and a lot of my community is furniture flippers. I think we experience it on a smaller scale before we become content creators. So that's really cool because every piece of furniture that we do, like, it can be a failure or a success. Yeah. And there's less stakes though. It's like at the end of the day, if I mess up a piece of furniture, I maybe paid $50 for it. Maybe I have $50 of supplies in it and I can't even sell it. And I'm out my time. That's not as big of a stake as, messing up a brand partnership or putting out a video and it completely flopping, where you have hours and hours into it and that's like affecting your channel and your revenue and all those things. But we experience it on a smaller scale first and can experience that together, and it kind of translates into a larger picture for the content creation. So that's kind of cool thinking about that.
Sometimes just it's encouraging to know, like, I'm not the only one. Yeah. That feeling of like you get isolated and so in whatever it is that's going on. You just need somebody else to be like,
and the
I've
people
been
encouraging you. Yes, you really do know that they've been there and they understand you and they want to see you succeed and get through it. And so that is a huge piece of it too. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, kind of the other thing we wanted to talk about that really goes hand in hand with failure is burnout. Because, those are two things that really, I think people get caught up in. It causes them to quit, to either kind of walk away for a little while and just not continue and press forward because it's hard. So talk about burnout in your business a little bit. I know you've had some specific moments in time where you were burnt out, and tell us like what that process was for you.
Yeah. Well, when we were discussing that we wanted to do this episode, like some of the notes that I made is that burnout is the downside of being consistent. We did a whole episode on consistency and how that really helped me as a brand and take things to the next level for me. But it also, that consistency, the downside of it is because you're working so much, there is a lot of burnout. And because what I do is a creative process, if you're not resting in other areas of your life, sometimes you can just be out of ideas. Another thing that has popped up with me is that I just got so fixated on doing what works and what doing what making videos that make money and that work and that my audience likes. I never was branching out and trying new things and pushing myself to do things that scared me. And it becomes like stagnant. And I think burnout comes from that. And like the funniest example that I can share of this and why like you should press in to pain and burnout is I had a brand partnership to do furniture molds, and I've never worked with resin or molds before, and I'd worked with transfers a lot, and these are all both things that you put on furniture if you've never seen any of my furniture makeovers. And so I actually was starting to do the project with the molds, whatever, and I got so terrified that I messaged them and was like, hey, can we switch back and just do transfers? My audience really loves transfers and I should just do the transfers only. And they messaged me back. Thank God they messaged me back and said, no, we want you to do the molds. And so I had a commitment. I had to honor that commitment. And that was like one of my most stressful pieces of furniture that I've ever done. But I pushed through it. I cried a lot on my Instagram. I just kept pushing through it. And it ended up being, it's one of my favorite furniture makeovers ever. I just finally sold it last year.
That was sad that you sold it.
I know. It actually resonated with my audience. It was one of my audiences that, it was one of my videos that really shot up my Instagram and my TikTok. And, but you know, I was burnt out because I was just doing the same thing over and again. And I was like, this is not going to work because this is not what my audience liked. And thank God it was an outside force that said, no, you have to do it. Now, because I learned that lesson, when I get to those points, like internally, I know, oh, like I'm feeling this way because I need to step out and do something different.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, you guys, when I step out and do those different things, they don't work. But I always feel better afterwards. And 1 out of 10 times they hit. And usually when they do hit, they hit really big. So
yeah,
just taking risks too.
But what are, in those moments, like, what do you think it is that you're really afraid of? Is it failure?
Yeah. I think it's cyclical. Look at the connection you just made there. It is, because I would rather, this is the lie that you believe. I would rather keep doing the same thing and over again that's worked for me in the past than step out and try something new, because 9 times out of 10, it's going to fail. But 1 out of 10 times, it's going to be the thing that skyrockets you to the next level or opens you up to a new audience.
Yeah, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier, being afraid to get it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like how we don't even realize in our lives how much that fear of just failure, of getting it wrong, prevents us. And it is true. Sometimes you need that outside person to be like, no, you've got to do that. Like, you committed like this, and just that little push. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know. I think there's something that's the breakthrough on the other side. It's just the feeling that you pushed through and did something hard, that you took a risk. Yeah. And to me, that's the success, whether or not it performs the way that you think. It's just pushing through those feelings, because I think the more you do it, the easier it gets, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I think so. And burnout can show up in a bunch of different ways too. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I talked about, doing the same thing and over and over and over and over and over, and over again is going to give you burnout. But just like the level of output that we were doing at one point, because we were addicted to, let's get the next sponsorship, let's get the next deal. How many deals can we get? Stepping back and being like, okay, I cannot put out a piece of furniture every week. I did that for a season, but now that I've built it to a point where it's a little bit more sustainable, I can build in breaks. And the first time I did it, you guys, it was so scary. So I felt like I had just been praying about it because I was burnt out, and I was like, what do I do? And
was this 2 years ago?
Yeah, this was 2 years ago. This is
2021.
Yeah. I heard God say, like, I want you to take the whole month of July off. And I was like, no.
A whole month?
No. And I fought it for a long time. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. I accepted it because I was like, God has the best for me. He's going to protect my channel. It's going to be like, I had never taken that long of a break from my YouTube since I went full time.
So that was 2 years of going.
It took a lot of him convincing me, like, you have to. I argued for a long time. And then I was like, okay, because the more I thought about it, I'm like, this sounds great. But I was still terrified. I was terrified to like stop the machine, because the machine had been rolling and working. And I was like, the algorithm's going to forget me. It's going to be terrible. And so I'd made the decision, I'm going to do this. And had told like my family, had told my husband, had told you, I'm like, this is what's happening. Do not book anything. And right before the last 2 projects I did, right before I took that break, were like these ones that exploded on TikTok. It's that flower dresser I was just talking about, the molds dresser. And this other one where I built a base, and back to back, they got 9 million views and like 6 million views on TikTok and on Instagram, because I had committed to taking that break probably and being obedient to God. And so that month, like I took completely off, didn't put videos out, and I was rarely on Instagram or TikTok. I was like, you guys are coming at a really weird time because I'm about to take a break for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And I did. And guess what? I came back and it was fine.
It was fine.
Yeah.
Actually, that was a year of huge growth. I mean, and you took off July and December that year for the first time.
Yeah.
And you still doubled over the year.
And December is less about I'm burnout, I need a break, but nobody watches DIY in December. And I just learned that over the past 3 years. I'm like, well, I might as well just take this month off because nobody's watching the stuff anyways. Why put the effort into it? But then like in January, February, it really kicks off. So just be ready to start at the beginning of the year. But I will be honest with you, whenever I take those breaks, it's really hard to start back up.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. It's like, we took a little break in between filming our first batch of episodes and our second batch of episodes. And when we turned on the camera for that second batch, it felt like we had never done a podcast.
That's true.
We felt so uncomfortable. It felt so weird talking in the microphones, putting the headphones on.
Like we had to learn all over again.
It was. I was like, what? We already did this and we felt like it went pretty well. So what is going on? It is hard to like come back, especially talking to your phone. You guys, talking to your phone is so weird. So if you get comfortable doing it, like you can probably be a content creator because it is weird. Once you take that break and realize how much you're talking to it, and you try to come back and do that first story, I always have to re-record that one 20 times because I'm just like, just be yourself. What's going on? You've done this for 4 years. You know how to do this. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go.
It's true. It is hard to get started again. Yeah. But what I hear you saying is every time you felt burnout, you take it as a signal that you need to make some changes. Is that right?
Yeah. And it can manifest or look different in how it appears. And I've also learned that I don't think there's like a cure or a fix for it. I think that just when I recognize the burnout, I have to ask the question, like, is this a breakthrough moment where I'm supposed to just push through this burnout and have a breakthrough? Or is it really you are not prioritizing your life right? You're not prioritizing your health, your family, your marriage, everything else. And do you need to pull back and take a break? I think that burnout can manifest in both of those ways. Yeah. You're either like going and it's like, okay, you need to stop, or it's, so I think that's interesting. I just don't think there's a cure for it. And so every time I'm feeling that feeling, instead of like getting mad at myself or being like, why are we here again? And I thought I made a change. I just say like, hey, what's going on? And I pray about it. And I say like, hey God, like, why am I feeling this way? What can I do? Do you want me to push through, or do you want me to deal with it? Do you want me to suck it up and deal with it? So just being sensitive to like that leading in your spirit of what you need to do, and ask the question, and and I think when it used to come on, it was almost like I would blame myself. Like, why am I here again? But just realize that it's just like a correction. It's just like a shift.
Course correction.
Course correction type of thing.
Yeah. I love that. I think another way I've seen you move through burnout is to do something fun and creative and outside of what you think is the right thing or the thing that'll work. Yeah. And just have fun with what you're doing again.
Have fun and not have an expectation at the end of the project.
Yeah.
And I love too that honestly, some of those this year have happened with a long-term brand partner. Yeah. And that's why I think relationship is so important in this, because I feel like I have the freedom to do that. And I'm trying new products of theirs that I've never tried on my channel before. So I think they enjoy it as well. And it's like everything like ties together, because that's talking about like community and relationships and everything. And so I love that I have people that work with me that trust me enough to be like, whatever you want to do, Christina. Not all of them are like that, but my long-term partners are pretty open to, you know, working through that burnout and those things with me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a tool that I feel like I can give people to kind of help with burnout is to not overschedule yourself. You have to be consistent, but not overschedule. And another great thing that you can do is just set boundaries, because when you're a content creator or a business owner, your mind is just constantly thinking about your work because it's such a big part, integral part of your life, and everything that you do is like making your business successful.
Right. It's not really compartmentalized the way that it would be if you were working in a traditional corporate office setting.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, maybe I just wasn't the greatest worker, but I was never thinking about work when I was away from work. Maybe I would have a thought here and there, but I wasn't.
But we also didn't love what we were doing.
That's true. So
in the way, and we weren't personally and emotionally invested in it. Maybe
we need to interview like someone who has never left the corporate world and someone who's in the corporate world and sees, like, I would just love to know their story and how they've navigated through that, because obviously we just didn't hack it in the corporate world, but we were good corporate workers, but maybe we just weren't meant to be in that space. But some people are meant to be in that space.
Absolutely. And I think too, the difference is I was in a completely different mindset, emotional state, spiritual state at that time. I think if I was called to be part of the corporate world now, it would probably look very different than it did back then. It was just a different time of my life. Yeah. You know, everything was different, right? Like I didn't have a family that I had to set boundaries around, or you know, just all those things that would be different. Now.
Well, and I'm terrible at setting boundaries. And the only reason that I have any boundaries is because my husband told me that I needed boundaries to begin with. And I received it, maybe not in a loving way at first, but he did share it in a loving way.
Yeah.
And you have to recognize that too, when someone says something with you and if you're like, right away, it's like, well, there's probably something you need to work on. But he was patient enough with me that he was like, hey, like, you have to close your computer. You have to put Instagram down. Like, I know you just posted this and you're trying to look at the insights and respond to the comments, but it's 6:00 and we need to eat dinner and you need to be present for your kids and all of that stuff, which I needed to hear because I was just so caught up in it that it's like, no, I got to go. Like, it's going to fade away if I don't put that next video out and do this next thing. And he was like, hey, but then your whole life is going to blow up. So we're important too. We need to feel important. And he was very good at when I kind of received that boundary and heard that boundary, understood that boundary, why it was good for me and for our family. I had to be okay when he was like, close it. And I had to be like, okay. And I got offended a lot at first, and he still has to correct me. I mean, it's
just last Friday. He had to tell you to put it down and not bring it to the pool. You were going to bring your computer to the pool.
I didn't get my video done and I just wanted it to be done. So is anybody like this? Like, I just want the project to be done before I go to dinner with my friends.
Yes.
Because I can't relax and have fun until.
But you had plans at a certain time. Yes. So that's why he was like, you need to just leave it. It'll be okay.
Yes. He was like, just do it in the morning. And I didn't want to do it in the morning because it's Saturday morning, but I didn't get it done. And so I had to get it done. And that's
sorry, am I calling you out?
You are, but it's okay, because this is, if there is a podcast out there or a person who's really good at organizing and workflow that you would like to suggest to me in the comments, please send it, because I am terrible, guys. I have been my whole life. I feel like I've gotten out of my procrastination, but my creativity works best under pressure deadline, which is very unfortunate. So the days leading up, if there's no pressure of a deadline, I'm just like kind of, and maybe the creative juices aren't flowing enough. And the harder we get up to that deadline, I start being like, yes, I've got it. And I get in the flow, and it's kind of like an addiction that I would love to get out of. But that's how I've always processed. But yes, Maggie's calling me out. But again, my husband has to continually, I'm still learning, I'm still growing that muscle of like, put it down. Yeah. Put it down. Because every time I pick up my phone, guys, I will open Instagram and go look at a stat or something. It's bad.
Yeah.
It is bad. So you do have to have those boundaries, and you have to have somebody in your life that loves you, that wants to hold you accountable for a good reason. So I know, like,
because at the same time your husband's calling you out on that, he's also one of the biggest supporters of your business, 100%, the one who's helping behind the scenes. So he's doing both. It's not
relocated
a negative
himself
thing.
to a different room in the house today because we could still hear him in the kitchen because he has a loud, beautiful, booming voice, and he's on work calls because he's a very hard worker and has a very important job. Thank you, Michael. I'm really sorry. He's up in a dampened room now, so we can't hear him anymore, but we have displaced him out of his office. That's how much he loves and supports not just Pretty Distressed, but this thing that we're doing here that we don't even know what it is yet. Yeah, he's our super fan. So
yeah.
And he keeps me accountable. But I wanted to ask you about like what the boundaries look like for you as a business owner, because you're a new business owner too. And it's progressed over the past 3 years to where you were just working with me, really part-time. Now you have like 5 clients. And so you're spreading your time even thinner. And so just the progression from you of setting boundaries and expectations, I guess, for people in your life and how it's changed for you.
I don't have it figured out yet. I feel like I am still flying by the seat of my pants sometimes.
Yeah.
Because not only have I changed my work life and the commitments that I have, it's like my family life and my husband's job, it's all been changing kind of at the same time. So I feel like I'm still figuring out good boundaries and how to manage my time. I mean, we were just talking about earlier, I feel like I need to start working out even earlier to maximize the hours in the day where my kids are at camp or at school.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times I can't get it all finished, and then I'm still working on stuff at night or early in the morning or on the weekends, because I'm still sort of figuring out how much time does this take? How much back and forth is there in this deal? You know, and it's moving and changing. And so I don't have a good answer. Yeah. I mean, I try as best I can to set a boundary and put my computer down. And I'm also still learning what to let go of after we just talked about this yesterday. You know, I was a stay-at-home mom and working very part-time for a long time. And now that I'm working more, I'm learning like, well, what do I need to let go? Where do I need to ask for help? And that's difficult for me because it's letting go of control, letting go of, you know, just certain things that I was able to do when I wasn't working as much. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I guess the short answer is I'm still figuring it out. If there's somebody out there who is good at time management and workflow, I probably need to learn from that because yeah, I don't. And summer has really like thrown it all a jumble again because I want to spend more time with my kids, but it means I have to reorganize the times that I'm working and build that into my day too.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to this note I have on here is like, don't overschedule. And it's very hard to not overschedule when you are a business owner because you don't want to say no to certain things. You want to do everything. There's so many dreams and goals and things that we have for all these other different things that we have a hand in. And it's hard to know when, I guess I have a hard time knowing when to shut it off. Like how my husband was like, shut it off, you'll get it done. Yeah. And not being able to relax until everything's done because it's never going to be done. Like nothing is the thing that I had to really get over is like my house being clean to be able to relax. And I grew up that way because that's how my mom is. And I just felt like that's like
me too.
Like I can't sit down and watch a movie if there's dishes in the sink. That's how I used to be. I'm definitely not that way.
I'm still
anymore.
that way.
And this is part of the conversation we were having yesterday. You were like, well, how do you do this? And how do you balance this? I'm like, we were sitting in my kitchen. I was like, look at my house. Like I have to be okay that this is what it looks like. You know, 5 out of 7 days of the week. There's about 2 days that it's clean and that's it. And I have to like, do I want to do all this work and be productive in these areas or do I want to clean house? I know I can't do both. Yeah. Maybe there are people that do both. You probably have a lot of help, I'm guessing, because we have 5 people that live in this house and I'm still, you know, I teach my kids how to clean up after themselves, but they still are learning.
Just kids. Yeah.
They're just kids. They do unload the dishwasher and and sweep and do certain chores around the house, but it's not like, I like the way the house looks after you do a full deep clean. Yes. And it's just not plausible right now.
Yeah.
I do hire help. Like I have a beautiful couple that comes and cleans my house every 2 weeks, but so it's very clean after they come, and we have to pick it up for them because we have the motivation to pick it up, but we don't have very much motivation in between their visits.
Right. Well, and all of this makes me think of something that I don't even know when I learned it or who said it, but it was like, if you make God's priorities your priorities, then he's going to multiply your time and give you capacity and equip you for whatever it is that you're called to do. And so I think of that, like, if I have my priorities set right with God and then my family and friends and work, then I feel like if I'm being a good steward of the time that I'm given and the people in my life, then he's going to, equip me and multiply my time to get it done.
So, and give you the wisdom to understand the things that you need to let go.
Yes.
I guess.
100%.
And for me, one of the things that I had to let go is that like everything needed to look really good. And like I needed to look put together all the time, and my house needed to look put together all the time, and my kids need to look put together all the time, and my car needed to be clean. And it's just like, some days things are going to be a mess and some days things are going to be clean. But I have learned in my life, for me to function, like everything can't look perfect. And so I've just kind of let that go, and I'm still learning to relax and have fun without it being perfect. I think I've gotten to the point where I'm like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I still need my body to be like, but you can relax.
I need to learn that
and
too.
It doesn't have to be like, things don't have to be done. I like wish we could go back to being kids, because having the summer is like such a beautiful thing, and then it just gets taken away from you as an adult. And I think as adults, we need a summer, or we just like 1 week out of the whole year where it's like you don't have to think about anything else, and there's no responsibility, but it only exists when you're a kid, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're lucky.
Yeah. Well, gosh, this ended up being such a good episode. I think
hope so. I hope there's something that you guys can take away from it.
I think that my main encouragement would be to don't be scared of getting it wrong, and to press through, make the adjustments when you're feeling burnout, when you're feeling like you failed at something. Get in a community of people who can encourage you along the way. Take rests. Operating from a place of rest is going to make you so much more successful and fulfilled in the end than to always be running on, you can't pour out of an empty cup, as we've heard of. So I think stepping back, taking rests, it's all just so important. Yeah.
So we'd love to know your feedback. We'd love to hear what you struggle with. We'd even love to hear your stories about a failure that you overcome, or how you overcome burnout. Obviously we need some organizing skills. So if you have any of those, please join the conversation in the comment box. Go subscribe on YouTube if you're listening to this somewhere else. We'd love to have you over on YouTube and comment there and let us know your feelings. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please rate and review this podcast.
Yes, please do.
We're going to be reading all that stuff, and we would just love your feedback and want to get this out to more people. So thanks for being here, you guys.
Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you next time in the Cypress Room.